execute this. So I can click execute, save. This will call the engine, and then this will run. So it happens very fast. When it gets finished, the result gets applied to the test itself. We'll notice it passed. Now, the reason this passed, instead of having to, we natively wait for elements to exist before we perform any actions against them, right? So we want to make sure that, say for example, this verification. If we executed this and we say, well, wait on elements is false, this is going to fail. And this is what a lot of tools do, and there's a lot of problems with the Ajax, is that they try to do the verification too quickly, right? The actual value hadn't changed before we tried to go in there and verify it. So this is what, but natively, for any action or verification, we actually wait for the element to exist before we move on and perform that action or verification. So let me actually re-execute that just to clear up these results. Great. So that was, and I think I may have just misstated, this is the scenario where the element doesn't exist. I think I said maybe it does exist. This is where it doesn't exist, an action happens, and then it comes back in and now exists. So we wait for these actions, we natively wait for these scenarios, and we can run these just fine. So let's talk about the second category. So let's go here. So I'm just going to clear this step out, and then go back to start recording. So this will launch my browser again with our little toolbar so that you know that this is the browser. So if you have a bunch of IE windows open, you'll know that this is the one that we're interested in. So we'll go up and go to our cascading drop-down example. So this is the scenario where the element does exist, but the values that we're interested in verifying or waiting for an action, they need to make sure that the values are there. So if we come up here to the make, so basically what this does is it allows you to kind of configure a car. So we have an Acura. Now, as we're selecting each of these values, you'll notice that the values for the next drop-down box are getting dynamically populated. So we have an Acura Integra that's green. So we get a little text box, a little message up here that says this. Now, if we come back to our test, we'll notice that as we were going through, selecting all of our options through here. So let's go back to the browser. So now at this point what we need to do is we need to add some verifications that we make sure, and actually when I say verification, we can change a verification into a wait. So instead of verifying for this text box to have these values, we'll say we want to wait for these text boxes to have these values and then move on to the next action. So here's how we do this. So we're going to turn on our overlay surface and we're going to go to the first one. And we're going to go in and say build verification. So each element has a quick task associated with it, which lets you, maybe intelligently pick a few verifications you may be interested in. But if you don't want to use that, you can actually come in here, you can see things, you can see where it is in the DOM, and you can dynamically build verifications and validate them real time. So for example, let's say we want to go to the content, and whenever we're doing this, we want to make sure that these values, so please select a make, Audi, Acura, BMW, are populated before we actually move on and make the selection of them. So I'm going to actually say contains, because later on I'm going to do a data. So we're going to say verify that the inner text contains this. We can see where this element is in the DOM. So if we click the DOM button, so we can actually see what the HTML looks like if we're interested in that. And then we can actually in real time validate our verification. So instead of having to go craft a verification, go execute the test to see if it works, we can actually validate that it's going to work when we get to this point in the test, real time. So I'm going to click OK. And then what I'm going to do is actually craft that same verification for these other ones. So I'll go contains, come down to green, content, and then contains. Okay, so now we have our three verifications, making sure that each text box has the value that we want. So let's close, actually let's minimize this. So these are the verifications. Now, instead of verifying it, because we know that the values are it's going to fail because they haven't gotten there yet, we're actually going to turn these into wait mechanisms. So if we right mouse click and say wait, wait, and wait, and then what we're going to do is reposition these right above before their particular selection. So if we go up, so basically what we have now is we're going to wait for the inner text to contain that string, and then we're going to look for that value and select it. And we're going to do that through all of these going down. So let's go ahead and execute this. So we basically waited for each one to go through, and I know it goes really fast. but it actually waits for each one to contain it and then moves on to make that selection. So let me actually disable these. So if I disable these waits so that we can just kind of see the failure, it's going to try to select the value in the drop-down box before the value actually even exists. Oh, did I disable it? Oh, there we go. So basically, and actually this illustrates another issue is that, it may pass that first time because they populated back in enough time to get the selection, but you notice in this last one, the color didn't populate in enough time, so it failed. So we would have gotten a false failure even though our scenario is actually working. So these are kind of both the Ajax scenarios that are very problematic for testing and do cause a lot of issues, especially false failures, because you get a false failure, you've got to go investigate. The website seems to be working, but it's just because of the Ajax operation. If your server's having a bad day, what's wrong?
I have a question.
Okay, if you don't want your test to get a failure if your server's having a bad day and it's slow to stream the data back. William?
When you're doing this, can you clear the cache so that your previous stuff is gone?
So we have the ability to add other descriptors here.
Okay.
So you go up, clear your cookies out. You can do things that will actually, clear out, set the browser up for the automation. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions at this point? Especially with Ajax. I know I've talked to a lot of you that are using Ajax. No? Cool. So let me go back to my slides. Browser abstraction. Is this where we are? So browser abstraction. So basically being able to record your test once and then not have to worry about the browser specifics for each individual browser itself. So go back into WebUI Test Studio. So let's go record just a very simple, I guess we could use that one. Let's just go record another simple solution sample. So let's go back to Google's page, turn the overlay on. We'll type in Telerik, do a Google search, and then we'll just do a quick verification that this text has this text in here, the first one. So we'll double click that, it's going to add it to our test. So if we go back to our browser, get rid of this miscellaneous click, very simple test. Navigate to Google, do a Google search, and then do a verification that one of the results has what we want. So to execute on multiple browsers, it's very simple. We can do IE, we can do Firefox, we can do Safari, and we're actually working on Chrome support right now. So Q2 release will hopefully have some Chrome support, depending on Google. So browser execution is very easy. And even though we record in Internet Explorer, we abstract out all the browser differences. So you don't have to worry about, just because I am in IE, that it's actually recording only for IE. So we take out all the differences, and we don't have to worry about the specific browser recording in its individual execution. Now, the other feature we have that's related to the multi-browser execution is, say Firefox or even Safari is rendering something that we need to do differently. Maybe we need to perform an extra step or an extra click to get the browser in the right spot. And maybe, because with browsers, it's typically, the JavaScript needs to be tweaked to do this for this browser kind of rendering. So let's say we had a click that we only wanted to run in Firefox. We don't want it to run when it executes in Safari or IE. So we could actually come over here to the properties, and there's a runs against property. So you can come down here and say, well, you know what? I only want this step to run when Firefox runs it. So when I execute this test, so say I set up my test list, the configuration of that test list says, hey, this is going to be a Firefox run. It goes, it executes all the tests in that container. It's only going to execute this step for this test in Firefox. So it's another way that if there are browser specifics, which are unavoidable within the ASP.NET HTML realm, these are how you can really come out and address those issues.